If you can open that safe, I'll marry you." The words sliced through the air before anyone in the boardroom could breathe. Elena Ward didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Every head turned toward her, toward the black steel safe, gleaming against the far wall, and then toward the man she'd just challenged. Ronan Hale didn't blink. He stood by the window, sleeves rolled, calm as if she'd asked him for the time. The CFO chuckled under his breath. "Careful, Elena. You might actually lose this one." She ignored him, eyes locked on Ronan. "You said you're the best at what you do. Prove it." He stepped forward, his reflection rippling across the glass table. "That safe," he said, his voice low, "hasn't been opened since your brother died." "I'm aware," she snapped. "It's the only thing he left behind that I can't access. Engineers, locksmiths, technicians, all useless. Let's see if you're any different." Ronan studied the safe, fingertips brushing the surface like he was feeling for a heartbeat. "It's not about strength," he murmured. "It's about intent. Whoever built this didn't want to hide money. They wanted to hide truth." Elena's jaw tightened. "Then find it." He looked up, meeting her stare. Something in his expression made her breath hitch. Not arrogance, but certainty. "You'll regret making it a wager," he said quietly. The CFO laughed again, too loud. But the moment had already changed. The room that had mocked her seconds ago now watched him, and for the first time, Elena couldn't tell if she had issued a challenge or accepted one. She straightened, cold and composed. "You have 1 week." Ronan's answer came without hesitation. "I'll need 1 night." By morning, the rumor had spread through every floor of Ward Dynamics. The CEO had promised marriage to the new consultant if he could open the safe. No one said it aloud in her presence, but whispers followed her like perfume. Half disbelief, half fascination. Elena Ward didn't flinch. She arrived early, heels striking sharp rhythms across the marble lobby, her expression carved from control. She was used to gossip. It was oxygen in corporate halls. But this time it felt different. Her assistant, Mia, trailed beside her with a tablet clutched to her chest. "Morning reports are in, ma'am. The press caught wind of your statement." "It wasn't a statement," Elena replied flatly. "It was a test. A test that trended overnight," Mia muttered, eyes down. "Everyone's calling him the man who might marry the CEO." Elena didn't react, but her jaw tightened. Let them talk. It'll keep them busy while real work gets done. Inside her office, the safe waited in silence, a black monolith against the glass wall, older than anything else in the room. Her brother's safe. Her brother's ghost. She stopped in front of it, eyes tracing the brass dial worn smooth by years of failed attempts. It had been moved from his private lab after the fire, the day everything changed, the day she inherited both a company and a mystery. The vault was said to contain his final schematics, designs for the renewable core engine that could have doubled their market share and secured family ownership forever. Without it, their patents were incomplete, and without proof of ownership, her father's old partners, now board members, were circling like vultures. The safe wasn't just metal. It was power, legacy, survival. She turned as the door clicked behind her. Ronan Hale entered, quiet as before, his ID badge glinting under the morning light. "You're early," she said, crossing her arms. "I don't like traffic," he replied. "Or waiting." Elena motioned toward the safe. "There it is. The heart of this circus." He approached it slowly, almost reverently. "Models old," he murmured. "Custom build, dual combination, mechanical fallback, modify." She frowned. "You can tell that just by looking?" Ronan crouched near the base, fingertips gliding along the hinge. No mass production markings. The frames reinforced with layered composite, not standard steel. Someone wanted it to withstand fire, not just theft. That word fire stung like glass. "It survived the accident," she said quietly. He glanced up. "Your brother's lab fire?" "Yes. 5 years ago. Everyone says it was a circuit overload. I say it was sabotage." Ronan's expression didn't change, but his voice softened. "And this is what's left." Her eyes flicked toward the safe. "It's what he left me, or maybe what he wanted me to find." He stood, studying the vault like a puzzle rather than an obstacle. His composure unnerved her. There was no awe, no ambition, only focus. "Why are you so calm?" she asked, almost irritated. "Every expert I've hired treated this thing like a dragon. You make it look like a crossword." Ronan's lips curved faintly. "Because locks are honest. They do exactly what they're built to do. It's people who lie." The remark caught her off guard. She searched his face for mockery but found none. Only quiet conviction. I don't pay you to philosophize, Mr. Hale. No, he said. You pay me to understand systems. And sometimes, understanding means listening before breaking. He stepped back, taking a slow breath, eyes still fixed on the vault. There's a pattern on the dial. Micro scratches. Someone's tried combinations repeatedly. Maybe years ago. The rhythm suggests 2 users, not 1. Her stomach tightened. 2. One who knew what they were doing and one who didn't. Elena didn't respond. The office felt smaller again, filled with memories she'd buried under glass and steel. Ronan picked up his notepad and jotted something she couldn't read. Then calmly he said, I'll need to review the serial archives from your brother's lab. There's a blueprint somewhere. The original locking schematic. You think that still exists? He met her eyes. Every builder leaves a trail, even the ones who plan to disappear. For a moment their silence felt heavier than the safe itself. 2 people bound by loss neither wanted to admit. Finally, Elena turned toward her desk. Fine, you'll have clearance. Ronan nodded, setting down his notepad beside the vault. You'll have your answers, Miss Ward, but I can't promise you'll like them. She exhaled slowly. Her reflection caught in the dark sheen of the metal. Just open it, she said, before it opens me. By afternoon, Elena's curiosity had turned into unease. Ronan Hale had left her office with a notebook full of quiet confidence and a promise that he'd find what others missed. That alone was unusual, but what disturbed her more was the way he'd looked at the safe, not with ambition but recognition. People who'd never seen that vault before always treated it like a trophy. Ronan treated it like a memory. Elena opened her intercom. Mia, get me the personnel file for our security consultant Hale. Ronan, full record, including previous employers. Her assistant hesitated. Yes, ma'am. But his onboarding file is digital only. Do you want a printed copy? I want everything, she said, sharper than intended. 20 minutes later, a slim folder landed on her desk, insultingly thin. Elena flipped it open. A single resume, half-filled. 2 short job entries, maintenance supervisor, Mercer Industrial, consultant, freelance systems security. No listed degrees, no military or technical certifications. The education section was blank. She turned to the last page. Emergency contact. Ivy Hale. No relation listed. No address. Just a phone number and the word sister, handwritten in neat block letters. Elena leaned back, tapping her pen against the folder. Hale. Not a common name. Not in this city. Her mind began stitching threads. His mechanical insight. His stillness. The way he'd said this safe was built to withstand fire. How could he know that She stopped the thought. It was impossible. That fire was 5 years ago, before he ever joined the company. She opened her laptop, typing Ivy Hale Ward Dynamics into the search bar. Nothing relevant. Then she deleted Ivy, and replaced it with another word her instincts whispered. Lydia. The page loaded slowly, and her chest tightened as the headline appeared. Engineer dies in Ward Dynamics lab fire, investigation closed. Her cursor hovered over the article. Lydia Hale, 32, senior research engineer, perished in an accidental explosion during prototype testing of a renewable core containment unit. Sources confirm the incident was ruled a technical malfunction. Ms. Hale was survived by her husband and younger sister, who declined public comment. Elena froze. The words blurred on the screen. Survived by her husband and younger sister. Ronan Hale. Ivy Hale. She clicked on the faded photo embedded in the article. Lydia standing beside a large cylindrical prototype, smiling, eyes bright. Behind her a blurred silhouette that looked vaguely familiar. A tall man, half turned away the camera. The same posture, the same shoulders she'd seen this morning beside the safe. Her stomach twisted. Ronan's presence wasn't coincidence. It was gravity, something that had been pulling him toward this building long before she'd ever met him. Elena shut the laptop, the soft click echoing through the empty office. Outside, most of her staff had gone home. Only the glow of the city remained, reflected in the glass walls, like ghosts looking in. She tried to reason with herself. Maybe it was just a name. Maybe it was a different Hale, a different tragedy. But her instincts, the same ones that had kept her alive in a boardroom full of men waiting for her to fall, told her the truth. Ronan wasn't here to prove anything to her. He was here to settle something of his own. She looked back at the safe. The brass dial glimmered in the half-light, mocking her. She pressed the intercom again. Mia, has Hale submitted his system access request yet? Yes, ma'am. Level 2 clearance. Deny it, Elena said quietly. Excuse me? Temporarily. Tell him it needs more verification. Yes, ma'am. Elena ended the call and stared out at the skyline. The city was endless light, endless noise, and yet, she had never felt this alone. She opened the personnel folder one more time. The single emergency contact stared back at her. Ivy Hale. Below it a phone number written in careful handwriting. Her finger hovered over her own phone, tempted. One call could confirm everything, or expose something she wasn't ready to know. Instead, she closed the folder and slid it into her drawer. Some truths, she decided, needed to wait until daylight. But the thought wouldn't stop circling her mind. The man she had challenged in front of everyone, the man who now held the key to her brother's legacy, wasn't a stranger after all. And if his wife had died in her company's fire, then maybe Elena Ward hadn't just hired a security consultant. Maybe she had invited a ghost. Ronan Hale's apartment was nothing like the office he spent his nights in. No glass walls, no skyline, just the quiet hum of an old refrigerator and the faint whir of an air purifier. The kind of silence that didn't comfort, only reminded you what was missing. He closed the door softly behind him and hung his jacket by the hook. The lights were already on in the living room, spilling warm yellow across the floor. "I heard you come in," a voice called from the couch. Ivy sat near the window, blanket over her legs, sketchbook open across her lap. The faint mechanical whir of her wheelchair hummed beneath the fabric. Her hair, chestnut brown like his, caught the lamplight as she smiled up at him. "You're home late again," she said. He set down his bag. "Long day, too many locked doors." She laughed softly. "You and your doors." Ronan smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Did you eat?" "Soup. Don't worry. I didn't burn anything this time." He walked over, adjusted the small portable heater near her feet, and brushed a stray pencil from her lap. "Your hands are cold," he murmured. "They're always cold." He sat beside her. For a long moment, neither spoke. The quiet between them wasn't empty. It was heavy, filled with everything they didn't say. "How was work?" Ivy finally asked. He hesitated. "Strange. Because of her." He looked at her. "You've been reading the news again." She gave a small shrug. "You know it's impossible not to when everyone's talking about the CEO marriage bet." She said it teasingly, but her tone softened. "Is he really like they say? Cold? Sharp as glass?" Ronan's gaze drifted to the window. The city lights shimmered like scattered data. "Too many signals, none pure. She's complicated," he said finally. "But not cruel. Just tired of pretending she isn't alone." "Sounds familiar," Ivy murmured. He gave a quiet chuckle. "Maybe." But his mind wasn't on Elena. It was on the safe, the black steel monolith that sat in her office like a sealed grave. He could still feel the chill of its surface on his fingertips. And beneath that cold, something human, something hers. He stood, moving to the small desk near the kitchen. Inside the drawer lay a folded photograph, edges frayed from years of handling. He opened it. Lydia's face smiled back, wind in her hair, eyes full of challenge, a smudge of graphite on her cheek. She'd always worked with her hands, never with gloves. "You can't feel metal through plastic," she used to say. He touched the corner of her image. The fire had taken her, and nearly taken Ivy too. He had been there that night, watching from the parking lot as the lab burned orange against the dark sky. He'd begged the guards to let him in. He'd broken through the first barrier before the blast wave threw him backward into the pavement. The sound of it still lived in his ears. The smell of it never left his clothes. And after, when the company announced the cause, a failed containment module built under Lydia Hale's supervision, he hadn't had the strength to fight back. He was barely alive. Ivy was in surgery, and Lydia was gone. He'd taken her last paycheck, sold their house, moved her sister into this small apartment, and vanished. The world believed Lydia was responsible. The company buried the truth, and he buried his name. For 5 years he refused to touch anything mechanical beyond fixing a door hinge or a broken chair. Machines had become ghosts, each one whispering her voice. Until that morning, when he'd stood in the CEO's office and seen it. The safe, the signature indentations, the reinforced hinge placement, the triple-layered composition that only one engineer would think to design. Lydia's design. He didn't need a file or blueprint to know it. He'd helped her test the prototype once, back when it was meant to protect research data from industrial espionage. She had named it the Prometheus model. It was supposed to safeguard creation, not bury it. He sat back down beside Ivy, the photo still in his hand. "Do you ever think," she said quietly, "that she'd want you to stop chasing what happened?" He looked at her, eyes distant. "No," he said softly. "She'd want me to finish what she started." Ivy watched him, a flicker of worry in her expression. You can't save her by reopening wounds, Ronan. I'm not trying to save her, he replied. I'm trying to understand why she died in the first place. The clock ticked, slow and heavy. He folded the photo and slipped it back into the drawer, shutting it with care, as though closing a tomb. Ivy reached for his hand. Promise me you won't get lost in it again. He squeezed her fingers lightly. I promise, he said, though even as the word left his mouth, it felt like a lie. Because in the space between his guilt and her memory, he already knew the truth. The only way to free himself was to face the lock Lydia had left behind. And tomorrow, he'd be standing before it again, the machine she'd built to protect the one thing he'd lost. The next morning, Elena entered her office before sunrise, her reflection moving through the glass walls like a shadow that had stayed awake all night. The safe loomed in its corner, cold, patient, indifferent, but something was different. On the polished surface of her desk lay a small folded piece of paper, no envelope, no signature, just a thin, careful crease through the middle. She frowned. Mia? Her assistant's voice buzzed through the intercom, sleepy. Yes, ma'am. Did anyone come in here last night? No, ma'am. The cleaning crew signed out at 10. Elena hesitated. And Ronan Hale? A pause. He left at 9:30, logged out of the security system right after his rounds. Elena ended the call and picked up the paper. It wasn't ordinary printer stock, rough texture engineering-grade drafting paper. She unfolded it slowly. Inside was a diagram, precise, beautiful and impossible. Lines and annotations drawn by hand, the kind of line work that spoke of experience, not arrogance. It detailed the inner mechanism of a rotary lock system, down to microscopic tolerances. A single notation stood out, 0.021 millimeters offset, binding under pressure. She knew what that meant. It wasn't theory, it was diagnosis. Her pulse quickened. No engineer on her payroll had come close to mapping that error. Someone had found the flaw. She pressed the intercom again. Mia, call the mechanical division head to my office immediately. Within 15 minutes, Garrett Walsh arrived, sleeves rolled up, coffee in hand, still half asleep. You said it was urgent? She slid the drawing across the desk. Tell me what you see. He studied it for a full minute before exhaling. Well, whoever did this isn't guessing. Elena's eyes narrowed. Explain. This level of accuracy, you don't sketch like this unless you've spent years with precision tools. It's not a blueprint, it's a correction. He tapped the small margin note. Whoever made this found the mechanical deviation that's kept the safe locked all these years. She crossed her arms. And Garrett looked up. And they're better than my entire department. That stung more than she wanted to admit. Can you replicate it? She asked. He shook his head. No serial reference, no initials, no timestamp. Whoever left this wanted to be understood, not found. She dismissed him with a nod. When the door closed, Elena sat alone, staring at the drawing. Unshied, precise, flawless. There was only one person who could have left it. Ronan Hale. She pictured him standing there in the dark, the calm way he'd traced the safe's edges, the certainty in his voice. And she wondered, had he been testing her this whole time? By noon, curiosity had eroded her restraint. She found him on the lower level, in the surveillance room, reviewing access logs. Hale, she said, stepping inside. He turned, unsurprised. Morning, Miss Ward. I found something on my desk, she said. A drawing. You wouldn't happen to know anything about it. He looked at her steadily. I leave a lot of things behind. Paper isn't one of them. She held his gaze. You were the last person in my office last night. He tilted his head slightly. So were you. The deflection annoyed her, but beneath it she caught the faintest trace of amusement in his eyes. You're not denying it. I'm not confirming it. Why not take credit? She pressed. Ronan turned back to the monitors. Because you don't believe in coincidences. You believe in control. And if I tell you I left it, you'll spend the next week trying to figure out why. Elena's voice sharpened. You think this is a game? No, he said softly. I think it's a conversation. She didn't respond right away. The room hummed with the sound of surveillance feeds and air conditioning, and underneath it something electric. Then answer me this, she said. What do you expect me to do with it? Understand it, he replied. Before you try to own it. That line unsettled her more than she cared to admit. He returned to his screen, ending the exchange without ending it at all. She stood there for another moment, unsure whether to be furious or fascinated. When she finally left, she carried the drawing in her hand, But his words in her head. Back in her office, she spread the paper out again. The lines, the precision, the confidence. It wasn't just skill, it was intimacy. Whoever drew this knew the safe as if they had once built it. And yet, what struck her most wasn't the technical perfection. It was something subtler, near the bottom corner, almost invisible, a faint impression, not a signature, not initials, but the indentation of a ring pressed accidentally against the paper as the artist worked. A ring mark, oval, smooth, slightly distorted by pressure. For a brief second, Elena forgot to breathe. The safe, her brother's legacy, the fire, everything tangled in her mind. And Ronan Hale, with his unrateable calm and the faint sadness in his eyes, suddenly seemed far too close to the truth she'd spent years avoiding. She folded the paper again and locked it in her drawer, though she knew as she turned the key that it wasn't the safe she was protecting anymore. It was herself. Elena didn't like waiting for people to tell her the truth. She preferred to corner it. By late afternoon, she'd had enough of Ronan Hale's riddles and silences. The note, the diagram, the precision, all of it pointed to someone who knew far more than he claimed. She pressed her intercom. "Send Mr. Hale to my office." Now, when he entered, she was standing by the window, arms folded, the city burning gold behind her. The folded drawing lay open on her desk like evidence. "Close the door," she said. He obeyed, unhurried. "Something wrong, Miss Ward?" She turned sharply. "You could say that. I've had my HR team double-check your records. They're incomplete, laughably so. No education, no certifications, no references. You don't even exist on the national employment grid until 6 years ago." Ronan didn't blink. "Maybe I'm just very private." "Private?" Her voice was ice. "You forged your history, Hale. You built a ghost resume and walked into my company under a fake name. So why don't we skip the games and tell me who you really are?" He studied her, calm, unrateable, hands clasped loosely behind his back. "Would you believe me if I said I used to work here?" That stopped her. "Excuse me." In the old R&D division, he continued, his tone measured. Before the explosion, her pulse spiked. "That's impossible. That lab was shut down after the fire," he said softly, finishing her sentence. "Yes, I know, I was..." Silence swallowed the room. The only sound was the faint ticking of the clock behind her desk. Elena stepped closer, her voice lowering. "You're saying you worked for Ward Dynamics under another name. Why hide it?" "Because the name I had then," he said quietly, "wasn't one I could live under anymore." She narrowed her eyes. "And what was that name?" He hesitated, just long enough for her to see that he was choosing between pain and pride. "Ronan Calder." The surname hit her like a blade. Calder, the husband in the article. Lydia Hale's husband. Elena's mind spun, but she forced her voice to stay level. "You lied to get in here." "I adapted," he corrected. "You wouldn't have hired me if you knew who I was." "You're damn right I wouldn't have. You broke every clearance rule I have." He gave a small, humorless smile. "And yet you challenged me to open the one thing your engineers couldn't. Maybe lies have their uses." Her temper flared. "Don't twist this. You've been manipulating me from day one." "Manipulating?" His voice remained even. "No. I've been watching. Trying to understand why the same company that burned my life down keeps pretending it's innocent. That's not fair."
Neither was burying the truth.
His words cut deeper than she wanted to admit. Elena walked around the desk, forcing herself to sound steady. "You think I had anything to do with that fire? I was in college when it happened." "I don't think you did," he said, "but you're building your career on a foundation of ashes you've never examined." She froze. "You're talking in riddles again." "I'm talking about ghosts," he said quietly. "You're chasing your brother's shadow through this company, trying to resurrect him by opening that safe. You don't even know what's buried inside. You just want it to hurt less." The air between them shifted, something raw, unguarded. His calm wasn't arrogance, it was grief worn smooth over years. Elena looked away, gripping the edge of her desk. "You have no idea what it's like to lose family." He took a step closer. "You're wrong." She looked up, and for the first time saw it. The quiet sorrow beneath his composure, the exhaustion in his eyes. Her anger faltered. "Why come back? Why here?" "Because I saw your name in an industry memo," he said. "Ward Dynamics, reopening old patents. You were looking for your brother's final work. I was looking for the truth about my wife's death. We're digging in the same grave." The words lingered like smoke. Elena sank into her chair, the adrenaline ebbing into a dull ache. "You could have told me. Would you have listened?" he asked gently. She didn't answer. He moved toward the door. You want to fire me? Do it. But that safe, it's not what you think. It's not about ownership. It's about evidence. Her head snapped up. Evidence of what? He hesitated, hand on the doorframe. Of why she died. And then he was gone. Elena sat motionless, her heart pounding like a second clock in the room. His calm defiance had left her shaken, not enraged. Somewhere beneath the accusation she had felt the truth, and it terrified her. Finally, she reached for the intercom. Mia, cancel my evening schedule. Yes, ma'am. And tell Mr. Hale. She stopped, considering her next words carefully. Tell him he has one final night to prove he belongs here. Understood. What should I tell him to do? Elena's gaze drifted to the dark safe against the wall, the one she suddenly wasn't sure she wanted opened. Nothing, she said softly. He'll know. She ended the call and sat in silence, the city lights flickering across her reflection. She had just given a stranger permission to reopen her company's deepest secret, and without realizing it, her own past. The building emptied out as night fell. Floors went dark one by one, the hum of conversation fading into silence, until only the top level remained lit. Elena stayed behind, waiting. She told herself it was oversight. She wanted progress, not company. But when the elevator chimed at 9:04 p.m., and Ronan stepped out, toolbox in hand, she knew it isn't just that. He paused at the doorway. You said I had one night. She nodded. Make it count. Ronan crossed the room to the safe without a word. His movements were clean, deliberate, almost reverent. He set his tools down on a canvas mat, stethoscope, mirror, microlight, graphite dust, small brushes, a set of handmade wrenches, not the standard kit of a locksmith. This was an artisan's collection. Elena leaned against her desk, arms folded. You look more like a surgeon than an engineer. In some ways it's the same thing, he said, crouching beside the lock. You don't force precision, you earn it. She watched as he placed the stethoscope against the metal and turned the dial slowly, head tilted in concentration. Each click of the tumblers was almost imperceptible, yet his hand moved in tiny exact increments, a conversation between flesh and steel. How long have you been doing this? She asked. He didn't look up. Since before I could afford mistakes. That's not an answer. It's the only one that matters. The room was filled with the soft rhythm of movement, metal breathing, graphite scratching faintly. Elena felt oddly small in the presence of it, as if she were intruding on something sacred. What do you hear? She asked finally. Patterns, he said quietly. Pressure points. The tumblers speak, but only if you stop trying to outthink them. You make it sound alive. In a way, it is. His voice dropped lower. Every lock carries the intent of the person who built it. Their fears, their habits, their mistakes. It's not about breaking in, it's about understanding what they were trying to keep out. She let that sink in. You talk like it's philosophy. It is. He glanced up briefly. Patience, precision, respect, that's the language of locks. You can't bully your way through a mechanism. It has to trust you first. Elena smiled faintly. Trust? From a machine? He returned to the dial, unbothered. Even machines have boundaries. So do people. She turned away, uneasy. I don't have time for boundaries. Not when a board meeting can erase everything my family built. Ronan's hands paused for a fraction of a second, then continued. That's not what you're afraid of. Her head snapped around. Excuse me. You're not afraid of losing control, he said, eyes still on the safe. You're afraid of finding out what's inside, that your brother left you something you can't hit. The words hit too close. You think you know me? He didn't flinch. I think I recognize the sound of someone pretending their anger is strategy. Elena wanted to fire back, but couldn't, because he was right. She walked closer, stopping behind him. You sound like you've known failure intimately. He gave a soft, humorless chuckle. Failure's the only teacher that doesn't take bribes. Her voice softened. What did it teach you? That sometimes things break for reasons you can't repair. He adjusted the stethoscope, listening again. There was a pause, then a faint, distinct click. One of the tumblers aligned. He looked up, meeting her eyes. That's the first. She leaned forward. How many are there? 5. And how many do you expect to open tonight? That depends on you. On me? He nodded toward the safe. You're part of this mechanism whether you like it or not. The person who built it designed it for a ward. There's emotional code buried in the logic, patterns that run to decision timing, rhythm, even human instinct. She wanted to make something that couldn't be opened by someone without purpose. Elena blinked. You said she. Yes, he murmured, almost too quietly. She. The way he said it, reverent, careful, made Elena realize what she had only suspected. This lock wasn't just a challenge to him. It was a conversation with a ghost. She wanted to ask more, but his focus deepened, shutting her out gently. Minutes passed in near silence, broken only by the turning of the dial and the quiet hum of his breath. When the second tumbler clicked, the sound was sharper. Elena flinched, not from fear but from the strange satisfaction it stirred in her chest. You heard that one, he said, faint smile tugging at his mouth. Yes, that's what trust sounds like. She rolled her eyes but couldn't hide her curiosity. You really believe that, don't you? I have to, he said simply. It's the only way I can keep touching the things that once destroyed me. The sentence hung there. Elena said nothing. She didn't know how. He finally sat back, wiping his hands with a cloth. 2 tumblers down, 3 to go. The third's a liar built to mislead anyone impatient. If you push too fast, it resets the entire system. She raised a brow. So, we wait? He nodded. We wait. The irony wasn't lost on her. For the first time in years, someone had told her to stop moving, and she listened. Minutes stretched. The city outside pulsed in neon rhythm, but the office felt suspended, untouched by time. Eventually he said softly, You hide your fear well. Her throat tightened. I don't hide it. I just don't feed it. He looked at her, not like a subordinate, but an equal. That's still hiding. Elena let out a shaky breath. You're infuriating. So I've been told. The silence that followed wasn't tense anymore. It was fragile. After an hour he removed the stethoscope and leaned back. It's listening now, he murmured. But it's not ready to open. Not yet. Elena glanced at the half-turned dial. Then we try again tomorrow. He stood slowly, packing his tools with deliberate care. Tomorrow it might trust us a little more. As he reached the door, she spoke without thinking. Ronan? He turned. Thank you, she said quietly. He studied her for a heartbeat, then nodded. For what? For not breaking it. His mouth curved into something faintly sad. That's the only way to keep things worth opening. When he left, the office fell silent again. Elena walked over to the safe, placed her palm against its cool metal, and for the first time didn't see a machine, she saw a mirror. Elena couldn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the faint smile Ronan gave her before leaving. Quiet, composed, too heavy for words. She'd spent her life decoding strategies, boardroom plots, financial patterns. Yet nothing had ever felt as complicated as the silence between them. She tried to push him out of her mind, but the feeling of unfinished truth gnawed at her. The way he spoke about the safe, about the one who built it, hadn't been technical. It is personal. Too personal. By midnight she was still pacing. Finally she sat at her desk, opened her private terminal, and accessed the restricted company archive. Only 2 people had access to this level, herself and the chairman emeritus, her father. The database shimmered onto the screen, rows of old project files, decades of innovation, mistakes, patents, and buried stories. She typed the name she'd seen in that old report, Lydia Hale. The search returned 12 results. 10 were engineering documents, 1 an internal memo, and 1 a safety report marked confidential. Do not distribute. Elena clicked the memo first. It was dated 4 weeks before the fire. Subject: urgent material deviation in R&D prototype lab 3 Project Meridian. To Executive Oversight Committee. From Lydia Hale, Senior Systems Engineer. Summary. Testing shows structural instability in high-voltage wiring supplied by Kestrel components. Tolerance deviation exceeds safety margins by 0.8%. Recommend immediate suspension of operations until recalibration or supplier replacement. Elena scrolled down. The message continued in tight, efficient prose, the tone of someone who didn't dramatize problems, but solved them. At the bottom she found 2 signatures in response. Acknowledged. L. Ward, Chairman. Reviewed. M. Crow, Director of R&D. And beneath that, a final note in her father's handwriting. Added later. Proceed with caution. Budget overruns will not be tolerated. Elena froze. Her heart thudded once. Hard. She clicked the second file. The safety report. Time-stamped 3 days before the explosion. Subject: critical hazard advisory, potential short-circuit event imminent. Description: testing indicates insulation failure risk under heat stress conditions. Strongly advise power down of all non-essential circuits. The report ended abruptly. No confirmation of receipt, no follow-up, just a blank space where accountability should have been. Her father's private notes were attached at the bottom. Handle internally. Public disclosure unnecessary. Containment preferable to external audit. Alina sat back staring at the words. The air in the office felt too thin. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't negligence. It was deliberate silence. She pulled up an archived press release from the same month, the one she'd read as a teenager but never questioned. The company's statement had called it a contained incident resulting from experimental system miscalibration. The engineer in charge, Lydia Hale, was named as the one overseeing the failed test procedure. Her father had let her take the blame. Elena's hand trembled on the mouse. For years she'd defended her father's legacy, convinced that every rumor of corruption was exaggerated. Competitors jealous, journalists cynical, but the truth sat before her, clean and undeniable. Lydia hadn't been reckless. She had been right, and they had buried her under the ashes of their own convenience. Alina leaned back, closing her eyes. The enormity of it pressed against her ribs. All those years she'd spent trying to prove she was strong enough to lead when the foundation beneath her throne was built on another woman's destruction. When she opened her eyes again, they burned with something new, not guilt, but clarity. She scrolled through more of the archive, following the paper trail her father had hoped no one would ever see. Payment records. Contractor receipts. One line stood out. Kestrel components. Expedited order for Usul wire replacement. Post-incident. They had fixed the issue quietly after the fire. Proof of guilt disguised as efficiency. Her father's initials were everywhere. It was almost too clean, the perfect crime of corporate arrogance. She exhaled slowly, the kind of breath that comes after the ground shifts beneath you. Now she understood Ronan. He wasn't after her position, or her company, or revenge. He wanted something far heavier, the truth. The kind of truth that could restore what had been stolen from his wife's name. He had come back not to destroy Ward Dynamics but to redeem it. And in some impossible way, that redemption now depended on her. Alina turned off the terminal and sat in darkness. The hum of the city felt far away. For the first time since taking over the company, she felt smaller than her title. She reached for her phone, hesitated, then typed a short message to Ronan. I know who Lydia was. We need to talk. Her thumb hovered over send. She deleted it. Not yet. Instead, she opened her drawer, pulled out the folded drawing he'd left and studied it again. The lines, the precision, the single offset mark. She realized now it wasn't just a schematic. It was an echo of the same language Lydia had used in her reports. Deliberate, balanced, exacting. The same kind of mind. The same kind of heart. Elena whispered into the quiet. You were never wrong. She didn't know if she meant Lydia, or Ronan, or herself. Outside, dawn began to touch the skyline, washing the city in pale light. By morning, she was in the archive room again. This time physically, the air heavy with dust and old metal. Rows of forgotten binders lined the walls like tombstones. She found a box labeled Internal Investigations, Closed Cases. The date matched the year of the fire. Inside were folders marked Redacted and Settlement Confidential. Most were empty, but one had contents. A printed memo addressed to her father. Re-employee, inquiry, Lydia Hale's spouse. Summary. Surviving husband filed multiple complaints alleging safety misconduct and procedural cover-up. Complaints were dismissed due to insufficient evidence and emotional bias. Underneath was a single attached photo, a grainy security still from the aftermath. A man standing outside the burned R&D building, soot-streaked, unrecognizable except for the despair in his stance. The caption read simply, R. Hale. Ronan. Elena traced the photo's edge with her thumb. She could almost feel the heat of that night, not from flames but from the injustice that had burned unchecked. She sat there for a long time, the papers spread out like ghosts across the table. When she finally rose, her resolve was steady. This wasn't about loyalty to her father anymore. It was about something far older and far rarer. The kind of integrity Lydia had written about, the kind Ronan still carried in his silence. If Ward Dynamics was going to survive, it couldn't be built on denial. Elena gathered the files, sealed them in an envelope and marked it to be released, pending confirmation. Her reflection in the archive window was pale, hollow-eyed, but alive. The company her father built had buried a truth. She was going to dig it up. And when Ronan returned that night to finish opening the safe, she knew exactly what she would say to him. Not as a CEO, as someone ready to unlock what should never have been sealed. Elena waited in her office long after sunset, the city lights stretching like veins of gold beneath the glass. The folder sat in front of her, the memos, The reports, the photo of a man outside a burning building. Every page felt heavier than paper, heavier than guilt. When the elevator doors opened, she didn't look up. She already knew it was him. Ronan entered quietly, the same unhurried pace, the same calm gravity that always seemed to steady the air around him. But tonight his silence carried weight, like he already knew she'd found something. "You said one night," she began, her voice low. "You got it. Now I need another." He didn't answer, just set his gloves and toolkit on the table. "You found something," he said finally. Elena nodded. "More than I wanted to." She pushed the folder toward him. Read. He opened it slowly. The first page, Lydia's memo, caught his eye immediately. His fingers stilled on the paper, tracing her handwriting. When he saw her signature, his breath hitched. He read in silence. Each line drained color from his face until only the quiet devastation remained. Elena spoke softly, almost to herself. "She wasn't wrong, Ronan. She warned them about the wiring. She filed the report. My father saw it, and he told them to proceed." He silenced her, then covered it up. The room felt airless. Ronan's jaw tightened, eyes still on the page. "He knew," he murmured. "He knew, and he let her die." His hands trembled once, barely visible, before he forced them still. "I'm sorry," she said. He looked up then, not with anger but something worse. A hollow, quiet disbelief. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because it's time someone else carried the truth," she said. "And because I can't undo what he did, but I can help you finish what she started." He shook his head slowly, closing the folder. "You think opening that safe will change anything? That it'll bring her back?" "No," Elena said softly, "but I think it might finally let her rest." Ronan's eyes flickered toward the dark steel vault in the corner, that cold monument to everything buried and unfinished. "I've spent 5 years trying to forget that sound," he said quietly. "The lock clicking shut after the fire, the silence after the alarms. I told myself I'd never touch another mechanism like it again. And yet here you are," Elena replied. He met her gaze, steady, unguarded. "You don't understand. That safe isn't just a machine, it's her handwriting in metal, her fingerprints in brass. I helped her design the prototype before." He stopped himself, "before the company buried it." Elena's voice softened. "Then maybe that's exactly why you're the only one who can open it." He exhaled slowly, torn between resentment and reluctant understanding. "If I do this, it's not for you. I know. It's for her." "Yes. And it happens my way." Elena nodded without hesitation. "Name your terms." "Complete secrecy," he said. "No one else knows. No assistants. No engineers. No cameras. This is between us. Done. No interference. You don't question what I do or how I do it." "Agreed. And when it opens, whatever's inside, you don't destroy it. No matter what it says about your father, your company, or you." She hesitated. That was the hardest promise to make, but she made it anyway. "I swear it." Something in him eased, just slightly. He picked up the folder again, then looked back at her. "You realize this could burn everything you've built." "I'm not here to protect a name anymore," she said. "I'm here to protect the truth." He gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod. Then quietly, "We start tonight." Elena felt her throat tighten, a strange mix of fear and relief. For the first time they were no longer adversaries circling a mystery. They were allies bound by it. Ronan unpacked his tools again, laying them out like a ritual. The stethoscope, the tension wrench, the micro drill. He moved with precision, but there was something gentler now. Less of the detached craftsman, more of the man honoring a memory. Helena pulled her chair closer, the lamp casting a warm pool of light across the cold metal. "Tell me what to do," she said quietly. He didn't look up. "Listen." The first click of the dial echoed faintly, like a pulse returning after years of stillness. As he worked, he spoke, not about mechanics but about meaning. "Lydia used to say a lock is a promise, not a barrier. You build it to guard something precious, not to keep people out forever." Elena watched the light shift across his face, concentration etched deep, grief hidden in the stillness. "She sounds like someone who built things with her heart," Elena murmured. "She did," he said softly. "That's why it broke her when they made her choose between integrity and obedience." He turned the dial again, slower this time. The sound deepened, a heavier click, followed by a soft metallic sigh. "That's 3 tumblers," he said. "2 more." The quiet stretched between them, full but not uncomfortable. "I used to believe," Elena whispered, "that leadership meant control, that if I could just fix everything, Make it perfect. I could erase what came before. Ronan didn't look up, but his voice gentled. You can't rewrite a foundation. You can only decide what you build on top of it. She studied him, the calm, the patience, the grief that had turned into discipline. And what did you build? He paused, hand resting on the safe. A life quiet enough to forget the sound of failure. And now, he glanced at her, a flicker of something unguarded. Now I think failure's the only sound worth remembering. For a long time, neither spoke. The safe waited, not as an enemy now, but as a witness. Finally, Ronan said, the fourth tumbler is fighting me. It's built to respond to emotional pressure. She designed it that way. We'll need to stop for a few minutes. Elena nodded. Take your time. He leaned back, rubbing his palms together absently. Funny, isn't it? He said. The woman who built the most secure mechanism in this company trusted it to someone who broke everything else. You didn't break it, Elena said softly. They did. He looked at her, eyes darker, steadier. You're not them. The words hit her harder than she expected. When they returned to work, the silence between them wasn't strained anymore. It was understanding. The final hours of night slipped away unnoticed. The dial turned. The tumblers whispered. The mechanism began to breathe again. When the faint sound of the fourth tumbler clicked open, Elena realized her hands were trembling, not from fear but from something far older. Trust. Not the kind that demanded obedience, but the kind that comes from standing together over something broken, choosing to repair it, not for power but for truth. By dawn, the safe was still locked, but it was no longer an adversary. And neither were they. Hours blurred into silence. The world outside ward dynamics went on. Lights flickered across towers, traffic murmured far below. But in the CEO's office, time had narrowed to the faint metallic rhythm of patience. Ronan worked without speech, sleeves rolled, eyes locked on the dial. His focus was absolute, hands moving like an extension of memory. Elena sat nearby, her nerves taut but steady, unwilling to break the spell with words. Every sound mattered now, the whisper of tumblers, the soft scrape of metal, the slow inhale before a turn, and then a sound, unlike the rest, a low, reluctant click, followed by another, then silence. Ronan froze, stethoscope still against the safe's face. His voice came out barely audible. That's it. Elena's breath caught. It's open? He didn't answer immediately. He just placed his palm flat against the steel door as though feeling for a pulse. Then, with one final deliberate twist, the handle gave way. A soft mechanical sigh escaped, and the heavy door eased outward. The seal broke with a hiss, releasing a faint scent of old paper and dust, and something else, a trace of lavender. Elena's eyes widened. What is that smell? Ronan's throat worked, but his words came hollow. Her perfume. Inside, nestled in perfect order, lay two items, a sealed ivory envelope, and a small metallic data drive labeled Project Starling. Elena reached toward the envelope, but Ronan stopped her gently. Let me. He lifted it carefully, as if it might disintegrate in his hands. The handwriting on the front was delicate and unmistakable. For Ronan, his fingers trembled. For a long moment he couldn't move. Elena whispered, "It's hers." He nodded once, then tore the seal with deliberate care. The paper inside unfolded easily, the ink faded but legible, Lydia's handwriting flowing in graceful curves. He began to read aloud, voice cracking at first, then finding strength. My dearest Ronan, if you're reading this, it means you found your way back to what we built, and I didn't make it out. I won't waste words pretending I'm not afraid, but I need you to know this. It wasn't an accident. The fire, the failure, they were lies. I found the orders. I found the proof. They used defective wiring to cut costs. I filed warnings. They were ignored. Leland signed the authorization himself. Your name will be nowhere, and that's good, it means you're safe. But they'll make me their scapegoat. You'll hear stories that it was my fault. Don't believe them. You always said machines tell the truth if you listen long enough. This safe is my truth. Inside this drive is everything. My reports, the signatures, the data logs. It's enough to expose them all. If they silence me, promise me one thing. Don't spend your life chasing vengeance. Fix what they broke. Build something honest, even if it costs you everything. You once told me integrity was a luxury. I think you were wrong. It's the only inheritance worth leaving behind. Love always.
Lydia.
By the time he finished, his voice had dissolved. The letter fell to his lap, his shoulders shaking as silent tears welled and broke. Elena looked away, giving him space, but the sound of his grief, quiet, contained, raw, felt like the most human thing that had ever happened in that room. She spoke softly. She knew. She tried to stop it. Ronan nodded, eyes on the floor. She died for doing the right thing. She died protecting this, Elena said, pointing at the drive. Her integrity. He took a long, shaky breath and finally met her gaze. All these years I thought I was trying to forget her. I wasn't. I was waiting for her to speak. Elena felt something in her chest fracture, a guilt she didn't know she'd carried until now. My father, he let it happen. I found the memos, the signatures. Everything she said is true. Ronan's expression didn't change, but his silence said enough. I'll expose it, she said, voice trembling but firm. All of it. My father's cover-up, the board's complicity, the truth behind her death, no matter the cost. He looked at her for a long time, studying her face, her tone, her conviction, searching for deceit and finding none. Be careful, he said finally. The people who hide truth this well don't surrender when it's found. They fight back. I know, she said quietly. But this isn't about fighting anymore. It's about fixing. He folded the letter back into its envelope and handed it to her. Keep it safe. She shook her head. No, it's yours. Ronan hesitated, then slipped it into his pocket, close to his heart. Elena turned her focus to the data drive. We'll need to copy this before anyone knows it exists. He watched her carefully. And when you release it, she met his gaze. We release it together. The air between them shifted. No longer cold or adversarial, but bound by something deeper. Shared guilt, shared purpose, shared loss. Ronan exhaled, the exhaustion of years finally breaking through his composure. You understand what this means for your company? She nodded. Ward Dynamics may not survive it, but maybe it doesn't deserve to. Not like this. For the first time, a faint, tired smile ghosted across his face. You sound like her. Elena looked at the open safe. The letter's absence. The faint trace of lavender that lingered like a memory refusing to fade. Maybe she's the one finally running the place. They sat in silence for a while, the weight of revelation settling like dust. Then Elena spoke again, almost to herself. It's strange. I spent years fighting for control. But this feels like the first real act of leadership I've ever done. Ronan closed the safe door gently without locking it. Leadership isn't control, he said. It's accountability. He stood, gathering his tools. Keep the drive hidden. Don't tell anyone yet. Let me handle the digital integrity checks. If the files are what she says they are, they'll be more than any lawsuit. Elena watched him pack up, steady, meticulous, professional, but something about his movements felt lighter, unburdened. Ronan, she said as he reached the door. He turned. She'd be proud of you. His answer came after a beat. No, she'd be proud of you. And for once, Elena didn't argue. When he left, she walked to the window. The dawn was breaking over the city again, another morning that looked like every other, but would never be the same. The safe stood open behind her, its secret finally spoken, its ghost finally heard. For years it had been a monument to silence. Now, it was a confession, one written in metal, sealed with love, and opened with truth. The boardroom was colder than usual, not in temperature but in tone, an electric hush before a storm. The skyline gleamed through the windows, but even that morning light couldn't soften the tension threading through the air. Elena Ward stood at the head of the long mahogany table, posture straight, hands clasped loosely before her. Around her the board members shifted uncomfortably, a quiet sea of power and fear, dressed in tailored suits. At the far end sat Marcus Leland, the CFO, his expression polished into an easy smirk. Let's begin, he said smoothly, unless there's another surprise presentation this week. Elena didn't blink. There is. The smirk faltered slightly. She glanced toward the side door. Ronan entered without introduction, carrying a single black case. His presence in that room, a man who wasn't part of the executive circle, who had spent months invisible, felt like a disruption of the natural order. Every pair of eyes turned to him. Mr. Hale, Leland said, voice dripping disdain. I wasn't aware janitorial staff were invited to these proceedings. Ronan set the case on the table and opened it with calm precision. Inside were neatly stacked documents, data sheets, and a small flash drive. I'm here at Ms. Ward's request, he said quietly. Elena nodded. Mr. Hale will be presenting a technical review of internal safety audits from our archived R&D division. Leland laughed. You're joking.
I'm not, she said.
Her voice carried the weight of finality. The materials relate to the fire that killed one of our senior engineers, Lydia Hale, and to subsequent financial irregularities tied to your department. The air in the room tightened. Several board members shifted, whispering under their breath. Leland straightened, his polished charm cracking just enough to show irritation. Elena, this company has been through enough scandal speculation. That case was closed years ago. Your father— My father covered it up, she interrupted. And you helped him. The sentence landed like a gunshot. For the first time, Leland didn't have a quick answer. Elena gestured to Ronan. Show them. He connected the drive to the projector, and the wall lit up with diagrams, mechanical schematics, wiring tolerance reports, thermal deviation maps. His voice remained calm, measured, clinical. This is the core assembly design for Project Meridian, later renamed Project Starling. These schematics were drafted by Lydia Hale 3 months before her death. As you can see, her design maintains structural safety tolerances at 0.5%, well within international standards. The failure occurred when substitute materials were introduced. He advanced the slide. Procurement records, invoices. Here, the substitution came from Kestrel components. Non-certified insulation, cheaper by 38%. Authorization for the purchase, he clicked again, was signed by Marcus Leland. Leland's color drained. That's absurd. Anyone could— Ronan continued, unbothered. The delivery manifests confirm shipment dates. The first batch arrived 3 days before the explosion. Ms. Hale filed 2 safety warnings, one to the Oversight Committee, another directly to the chairman. Both were ignored. He paused, glancing around the room. Those documents are in your packets. And this— he clicked again. Projecting Lydia's final memo was her last correspondence before the incident. The screen filled with Lydia's handwriting. The lab is a ticking time bomb. The silence that followed was absolute. Elena stepped forward. We recovered these files from a sealed data drive stored in my brother's prototype safe. Alongside them was a personal letter from Lydia Hale, detailing the sabotage, naming the signatories, and describing her final hours. She died trying to prevent the disaster you told shareholders was an accident. Leland's mask finally cracked. This is insanity. You can't expect anyone to believe. I don't expect them to believe me, Elena said, cutting him off. I expect them to believe the evidence. She gestured toward the screen again. The final slide showed financial summaries, ledger entries matching Kestrel's payments to a shell account. The account was under Leland's initials. One of the senior board members, a stern woman named Harrow, leaned forward. Mr. Leland, she said sharply, are you denying that's your authorization code? He opened his mouth, closed it again. That data could have been fabricated. Ronan's voice was quiet, but sharp enough to slice through the tension. It wasn't. The encryption signature matches your department's digital fingerprint, the one only you and the finance director had access to. Leland turned on Elena, desperate now. You're destroying your father's company over a ghost story. That woman, Elena said evenly, was your engineer, my employee, and the wife of the man who just exposed your lies. Gasps rippled through the room. Leland froze. His wife? Ronan met his gaze for the first time, and for the first time Leland looked away. Yes, Ronan said softly. Lydia Hale. You remember her, don't you? She came to your office the day before she died. I don't recall. She handed you the safety report in person. Ronan's voice grew steadier, lower. You told her to stop playing hero. I know, because she wrote it down in her notes. You didn't silence her. The fire did that for you. Leland slammed his hand against the table. Enough. Elena didn't flinch. You're right, it is enough. She turned to the board. You all wanted transparency. You wanted integrity back in this company. Here it is. My father built this empire on innovation, but it will survive on honesty or not at all. Her voice hardened. Effective immediately. I'm calling a motion for Leland's removal as CFO, pending full investigation into criminal negligence and corporate fraud. Harrow nodded grimly. Seconded. Another voice. Aye. Then another. The votes rolled in unstoppable. By the time it ended, Leland was alone. He looked around, a cornered animal in a room of predators pretending to be civilized. You think this will save you? He hissed. You've just killed your brand. The stock will plummet. The press will eat you alive. Elena met his glare with a steadiness that came from somewhere deeper than defiance. Then at least we'll fall telling the truth. Security entered silently. Leland didn't resist, only glared at Ronan one last time as they led him out. When the door closed, the boardroom exhaled collectively. Harrow spoke first. Miss Ward, what happens now? Elena looked at the screen. the last slide still showing Lydia's neat handwriting. "Now," she said quietly, "we rebuild, properly." Ronan packed up the files, careful and deliberate. When he reached the door, Elena stopped him. "Wait." He turned. "Stay," she said. "The board needs to hear the rest from you." He hesitated, unused to being invited into rooms like this. Elena gestured toward the head chair beside her. "You're the one who rebuilt the truth. You belong here as much as any of us." He didn't move at first. Then slowly, he took the seat. Elena faced the board again. "This company owes its future to two people, my brother who dreamed it, and Lydia Hale who died trying to keep it honest. Her husband Ronan will now oversee our ethics and research division, his first task, ensuring no one ever has to die for doing the right thing again." The motion passed without debate. Ronan said nothing, only nodded once, the quiet gratitude in his eyes saying everything words couldn't. As the meeting adjourned, Elena lingered by the window. The city below felt different now, sharper, cleaner, fragile but alive. Ronan joined her, his reflection merging with hers in the glass. "She'd have hated the ceremony," he said softly. "She never wanted credit, just accountability." Elena smiled faintly. "Then maybe that's the right kind of legacy." He looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in years his voice carried something close to peace. "It is." They stood there a while, two figures reflected against the morning light, a CEO and a widower, no longer fighting ghosts, but standing beside them. Ward Dynamics would never be spotless again, but it would be honest. And that, at last, was enough. 6 months later, the name on the glass tower had changed. The silver letters that once spelled Ward Dynamics now read Lydia Labs, clean, understated, and alive with meaning. For the first time in decades, people said the company's name with pride instead of hesitation. Inside, the atmosphere felt different. The air hummed not with fear of power, but with purpose. Engineers walked the halls with open discussions instead of whispers. New safety boards were in place, transparent and participatory. Every quarterly report now began not with numbers but with ethics statements. At the heart of it all was Elena Ward, her leadership reshaped by truth. She'd stepped down from absolute control, restructuring the company into a collective, built on accountability. Her brother's legacy had not been erased, it had been reborn. And beside her, quietly but indispensably, stood Ronan Hale. He now headed the innovation division, not as a figure of vengeance but as the mind that redefined what integrity-driven design meant. His department had become a symbol of trust, merging Lydia's blueprints with modern ethics. Engineers called his floor the listening lab, a quiet tribute to how he said machines spoke if you only listened closely enough. Under the new charter, Lydia Labs launched a fund in Lydia Hale's name, dedicated to ethical engineering and research transparency. Her work had become part of textbooks, her story now taught as both warning and inspiration. And for Ronan, the world had tilted back toward balance in small, quiet ways. His sister Ivy, once confined by neglect, now received full medical care through the company's foundation. New treatments had improved her mobility. The first time she stood from her chair, he'd cried without shame. Elena had attended that checkup. She didn't say a word, only stood in the corner smiling softly, like someone witnessing the first sunrise after a long storm. One afternoon near the end of spring, the two of them returned to the restored R&D wing, rebuilt exactly where the old one had stood. The walls gleamed with white light. On a pedestal in the center stood a new safe. Same dimensions, same design, but open, permanently. No door, no dial, just emptiness, deliberate and symbolic. Elena traced the rim of the frame. "You kept every detail the same." Ronan nodded. "Except the ending." They stood there quietly, letting the silence fill the space where loss once lived. "This place used to make me feel small," she said softly. "Now it just feels honest." Ronan looked around. The clean walls, the hum of new machines, the faint smell of oil and ozone. That's what she wanted, not perfection, just honesty. Elena turned to him. "And what do you want now?" He considered it for a long moment. "To keep building things that don't need to be locked away." She smiled, eyes gentle but unreadable. "Then maybe we build them together." The suggestion hung in the air, not as romance, not yet, but as something truer, the beginning of shared purpose, born from wreckage. Outside, the city reflected in the new glass walls, the same skyline but somehow brighter. The safe stood open behind them, sunlight spilling across its hollow interior. No secrets, no ghosts, only possibility. Elena glanced once more before leaving. "Let it stay open," she said. Ronan nodded. "It already is." and as they walked out side by side, CEO and engineer, heir and survivor, Lydia's words seemed to echo faintly from the walls that had once betrayed her. Integrity isn't what we hide, it's what we leave in the light. If this story moved you, share your thoughts below. Tell us where you're watching from. Your voice keeps this community alive. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories of courage, truth, and redemption. Because every locked past deserves a chance to open again.